Artemis is another case of young Justice taking a character that was lesser known and or just kind of irrelevant like Miss Martian and springing that character into prominence by basically rewriting a whole bunch of stuff and changing a whole lot of things. The Artemis in this show is pretty different than the one in the comics in the same way that McGann is, but not like so drastically different that you wouldn't be able to understand what was going on if you read modern comics. It's actually a shame that Artemis doesn't really have a place in modern comics as of right now, which is like truly ironic because a lot of her story throughout this first season is getting out of the shadow of her parents' villainous past and also getting out of the shadow of Red Arrow, whom she seems kind of stuck behind in modern DC comics, and that's why you don't see her a lot outside of Young Justice, as the cancellation of season 5 is kind of up in the air. The writing team for Young Justice had a really solid foundation for where they wanted to take Artemis's character and expound upon it from where she was in the comics at the time, this even being pre-New 52, I'm pretty sure, because this was before 2011. And Artemis was kind of relevant, kind of not, as Tigress in the comics beforehand, but mostly like sticking to Teen Titans stuff. That's something you'll see a lot with these characters in this show, is a lot of them are really pulled from Teen Titans, and it's kind of funny. Anyways, that's enough of an opening spiel. We got a lot to cover, starting with Artemis's very first official episode appearance. She had appeared in the episode previously, helping out the team against Amazo in secret, but this is her first official character appearance and interactions with the team, which don't really go swimmingly, because unfortunately she is Green Arrow's next protege, introduced as Green Arrow's niece, which we know to not be true. I didn't feel like that's a spoiler, but if so, my bad. For certain people on the team, mainly just WallE, this is seen as a threat to one of his closest friends being Red Arrow. Red Arrow had decided not to join the team and leave his sidekick role as Speedy from Green Arrow, and so immediately Kid Flash is hostile towards this and hostile towards Artemis, despite the fact that he has no real reason to be, and we'll see more of that later in the show.
I do not need attitude from the newbie who drove Red Arrow off the team.
That is so not on me.
Artemis, throughout the show, and there'll probably be a ton of clips that I'll show, does not take this sitting down lightly in the slightest. She very much is, whatever energy you give me, I'm gonna give back. And she's also very tough and very, like, she keeps to herself a lot. And outside of her attraction for Connor, that's the one thing she's willing to boldly share.
Him say that. Must you challenge everyone? Where I come from, that's how you survive.
Artemis's introductory episode doesn't just set herself up, but it also sets up her family, which is going to be a reoccurring issue throughout the show. Mainly, it sets up her sister Cheshire, somebody who, much like Artemis, has found herself in the life of vigilantism and breaking the law, just on the other spectrum of that. She has joined the League of Shadows, become a shadow, and unfortunately is on the wrong side of just about everything in this show. Whereas Artemis has chosen the path of the hero, insert Green Goblin spiel here. Artemis is almost always trying to prove herself, not only because of the shadow that Red Arrow casts for her on the team, but also because her family has really messed up her perception of what it means to be a hero, what it means to be a good person, and how to deal with these things. She's so afraid that if she reveals that she has any sort of familial ties to Cheshire, to Sportsmaster, or to her mother, the Huntress, who is now an ex-con, she fears that her new place and her new sense of belonging will be taken away from her. Artemis has dealt with a lot of abandonment issues stemming from her childhood.
Mom's not getting out of prison anytime soon, and I refuse to live in this house with just Dad.
Dad and you and me.
When she was a young girl, her mother was in prison for being Huntress, and her sister couldn't really care less about any of it. She wanted out because it's heavily implied that their father, Sportsmaster, was abusive. And unfortunately, that left Artemis having to grow up in a home alone with her father, who is alluded to in later episodes, essentially setting her up for constant combat trials and trying to get her ready and groomed to be his next supervillain daughter. And at some point between Cheshire leaving and her mother coming back from prison, Sportsmaster also disappears out of her life. She has constantly felt as though she's been abandoned on multiple different occasions, whether by the choice of the person or not by the choice of the person. And for Artemis, I think this also brings in the idea of One day, we all, as people, have to look at our parents and recognize they're not the superheroes we made them out to be, especially as little kids. And for some people, that realization comes sooner, and for others, it comes later in life. And I think it's one of the more difficult realizations I've had to grapple with as I've gotten older. The recognition that the hero in my eyes has flaws, and a lot of them. That's not easy to come across. But Artemis unfortunately was given that reality at a very young age. So she doesn't really trust many people. She barely even trusts her own mother because her mother was rarely around when she was a kid. And now her mom is coming into her life trying to dictate how she does things, where she goes to school, and what she does. And while her mother is coming out of a place of love and a place of hoping that her daughter doesn't fall into the same pitfalls she fell into growing up and becoming a villain, Artemis isn't exactly all there for it. Because again, her mother was never such a huge presence in her life to begin with.
You're going, or you give up your extracurriculars.
Mom, don't make threats you can't enforce.
Artemis, this is a chance to better your life!
I think it's very interesting that Artemis's home life is almost the mirror opposite of WallE's. Whereas WallE's home life is far more happy and upbeat, and it shows a family of superheroes that are all together, that have lived to old age as superheroes, something that's very uncommon, and have all been able to move on and enjoy life. Instead, we see the polar opposite of the spectrum with Artemis, a family that has been broken up by acts of heroism and acts of villainy. A set of parents who serve as an example of what not to be rather than what to aspire to be. And I think that is a wonderful dichotomy to have, especially when the two characters are going to romance. Whereas WallE is following in a long line of superheroes, Artemis is taking the first step to changing what her last name means to the world and changing what it looks like for her to be a superhero. But that comes with a lot of pressure, it comes with a lot of expectation, it comes with a lot of insecurities. And that is what, at the core of Artemis, her character is, and her character growth is through this first season. It's learning to let go of those insecurities and learning to be able to move on with a found family. Young Justice does a great job of showing the idea of found family through characters like Connor and through characters like Artemis. She's so far from one-dimensional, and I think that's what makes her work so well. They could have easily just made her extremely insecure and mean for no reason, and a miserable character to want to watch, but instead they gave her a level of depth and complexity and layers that is so surprising for a children's TV show. She is insecure, and so she projects this air of toughness, of grit, of being able to do anything and everything the rest of you all can do because I need to fit in. But she masks it so well in front of the other members of the team that you don't really notice until you break it down to her own individual private moments, the moments with her mother, the moments of Artemis by herself. That's another thing. She could have easily just been a romance device for Kid Flash and a way for Kid Flash to grow emotionally and not done anything for herself. But this show goes out of its way to give Artemis her own arc, multiple arcs technically, and to give her depth and complexity outside of her relationship with WallE, which makes her relationship with him feel far more earned as the show goes on. Looking at you, most interpretations of Jean from X-Men. Take notes. Shade aside, this is the crux of Artemis's character and the crux of where we're going to build from for the rest of this season. And it's at the end of her introductory episode that we understand why she's lying about being Green Arrow's niece, and why she tries to hide it so badly from the rest of the team.
Do not hurt my friends.
Red Arrow is going to be reoccurring in this video because he provides a sort of antagonist role to Artemis, but getting back on the actual structure of the episodes, the next one that's important involves really just WallE and Artemis arguing for a majority of the episode, which involves some of my favorite gags. And what I find really interesting is that WallE goes to Artemis first when he has his doubts about magic. He makes all of the jokes to her first to seem like magic isn't cool and it isn't real, all while pretending it is for McGann because this man is lovesick.
So what do you think? Adaptive micro-optoelectronics combined with phase shifting?
Absolutely not.
It's a pretty fun dynamic and enjoyable, specifically the way Kid Flash acts in this episode. And while it's not like integral to building Artemis's character. I think it's an integral episode in building the relationship between the two characters, especially because Artemis won't let WallE get away with any bullshit, and I find it great.
Your little impress Megan at all costs game nearly got us all barbecued.
She really then spends like the rest of the episode trying desperately to prove to WallE that magic is real, while this man sits in what I can only assume is the greatest bit of denial that I've ever seen, simply because he can't fathom something bigger than himself and something beyond himself outside of science. Man, this is really ironic. I, of all people, am saying that. But that's besides the point. Okay, WallE may have his misgivings about magic and may not love it, but Artemis is there to play his straight man, and she does a fantastic job of it. I'm just glad that's not the only role she was given in the show, because it could have easily just been that, but thankfully it's not. I won't lie, I've never been like the biggest proponent of the whole like enemies to lovers trope, because a lot of the times it feels toxic and like terrible, but I think this is a really, really great way of showcasing that. Especially because in this episode all about the team losing their memories, we're shown that these two characters can not only have a functional like friendship with each other, but also a potential relationship with each other, as they're both very clearly into one another, especially Kid Flash.
You know her?
No, I swear, beautiful. Never seen her before in my life.
I also think it's a great way to tease their relationship by showing the fact that these two characters really do get along and jive with each other's personalities, when they're not pitted at odds with one another. That's mostly Kid Flash's fault, and a little bit of Artemis's base stubborn personality and want to survive, essentially, and thrive with her new family. Also, one of my favorite gags in the show, which I cannot believe they got away with some of this stuff, especially later in the video. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Quit touching yourself.
It's really telling in the scene, especially where Kid Flash takes her hand. These characters could be so much closer. Again, this episode does a wonderful job, has some of my favorite visuals in the show, with McGann's whole mind reconstruction thing. And something like a visual aspect I wish they kept, especially with McGann in like seasons 2 and on, but this isn't a video about McGann. So let me get back on topic. The very next episode, quite literally, is one of Artemis's strongest. It's an episode all about her past, her abandonment, and her family's like almost always constant need to run away from their problems, whether it was her sister, her father. Her mother's taking responsibility now, but her mother running from responsibility in the past. It's now something that's become a forefront of what this episode's about. Essentially, the cave is under attack by Red Tornado's twin brother and sister, and it's not going well at all. Almost everyone on the team is taken out because Red Tornado is supposed to be the den mother and he's not there, which leaves our two non-superpower having companions left to try and fend off what is essentially two Red Tornado level villains at once, which is not going to go well because they're busted and our team here isn't very powerful. And Artemis feels this throughout the entire episode. Robin is fairly calm, collected, and chill, able to navigate a situation like this because he was trained for it. Artemis wasn't. Every instinct in her body is telling her to run. It's screaming at her to run. We see her in the fetal position a lot during this episode, and I think that's really telling of the kind of mental state that she is in, and fighting just about every instinct in her body that's telling her to get away. And it only seems to get worse as the episode progresses. This also starts one of my favorite gags from the show as well, which is Artemis almost drowning multiple missions in a row. Reminds me a lot of Season 3's gag of Halo dying. I love that we see Artemis's exasperation throughout the episode, and we see her actually freaking out, because this isn't her normal.
We'll get Trot or get dead.
How can you be so calm?
Practice. Been doing this since I was 9.
She's tentatively afraid of losing the family that she just found. A place that accepts her for, well, who she presents. They accept her for who she presents and what she represents. And unfortunately, this is a threat to take it away. She is nervous and she is scared. It only gets worse when Robin is taken out of the equation. She has to figure out a way not only to save the whole team, but to not run away and abandon them. She goes through thoughts of leaving the cave to get the League's help, but then her team's dead. She has thoughts of just surrendering and getting it over with. But ultimately, and I think what was a great scene, is her finding strength in looking at her sister's mask, at looking at her sister's decision to run and to leave her family, and she decides not to make that decision. There's strength in a scene like this.
That might have been true about our family, but I found a new family.
It's also a really great episode for showing that she can be independent, but at the same time, having that support system, having that team around her does wonders for Artemis as a person, not just as a character, not just as a hero, but as a person in her own personal growth. Now, the episode that comes after kind of derails that idea a little bit, but we're focusing on this episode for right now. She successfully is able to deactivate the 2 androids and save her team. It's a great, awesome thing that she does, ignoring the fact that Red Tornado comes in and ruins everybody's day. Remember when I said like less than 30 seconds ago about undermining some character growth? Well, that happens in everybody's favorite mole episode. Calder is overheard talking about the fact that there may be a mole on the team and that one of them, specifically Artemis, McGann, or Connor, is the mole on the team because they're the 3 newest members. They're also the 3 most unknown members, if that makes sense. And unfortunately, this does a lot to hurt Artemis's confidence, something she was just starting to build up with the team and build up with the idea that they're her family. And it's not exactly going well because she pretty much takes McGann and the 2 of them split off, and Artemis nearly drowns for a second mission in a row.
Okay, nearly drowning 2 nights in a row is way less fun than it sounds.
And since she's not given a whole lot to do this episode, it's probably a great time to mention that I loved her style of humor that's presented throughout this episode, specifically because it very much fits mine, which is like a drier, more sarcastic, you're an idiot type of humor. And I really like that, but also like I'm a dickhead, so editor, cut that out. We can't let them know that I'm not a perfect human. Play the Gorilla Lice clip instead.
About
1 word. Souvenir.
2 words. Gorilla lice.
By the end of the episode, they've pretty much resolved the mole problem, and Artemis's confidence, I don't want to say is fully back in the team, and she doesn't feel shaken anymore, but her place on the team doesn't feel nearly as loose as it previously felt. But oh my gosh, can she not swim? The very next episode has almost nothing to do with Artemis or her development as a character other than her wincing at the idea of Sportsmaster being on screen, but rather it's just a collection of gags for her that I found absolutely hilarious. One of my favorites being every time she elbows WallE, and that happens like in 12 episodes.
Ow! Will you cut that?
Hello, Wally. If the big guns are fighting plants, who do you think we'll be fighting?
I don't know. I guess we'll...
Or the fact that she almost drowns again.
No way I'm nearly drowning 3 missions in a row.
It also serves as a fairly sweet moment between Kid Flash and Artemis as she offers him a rebreather. It's really sweet of her. But yeah, it's pretty much just a collection of gags for her character, and one gag that I don't know how this got past Cartoon Network censorship at the time, and it's a gag that I use particularly in my real life all the time.
I feel naked. Not in a fun way.
I swear, man, Cartoon Network would just let you do whatever you wanted with 0 consequences, and it was hilarious. But outside of that, this episode really just serves to have some sweet moments between Artemis and WallE and show that they're developing more of a friendship than rivalry at this point. But unfortunately, Artemis can't catch a single break. Not only has almost 3 episodes in a row she almost drowned, but now in this episode, which is all about the team, unfortunately, having a training exercise go wrong. It's supposed to be a failure at all cost mission. No matter what they do, they're going to fail. That's the idea behind the episode and the training. But unfortunately, it becomes all too real when Artemis dies on the mission by mistake. And because of this, McGann thinks it's real. She thinks everything that's a part of this episode is real. And so the following episode is therapy. It's about dealing with the events that the team just watched transpire. And it's kind of weird because Artemis is the reason the events transpired. She just was dead, for the episode. So to her, it had no bearing and it had no meaning. And there was nothing for her to really talk about with Dinah regarding this situation. Instead, I love the fact that the following episode plays on the idea that while Artemis isn't necessarily struggling from this event, she is still struggling in being herself to the team and not being willing to open herself up to the team and harboring secrets that are slowly melting and eating away at her, even if she doesn't want to admit it, because she's always playing too tough for anybody around her.
But you still keep secrets from them.
You won't tell them. You can't.
I won't. But you should. You could start by admitting you're not really Green Arrow's niece.
It's a lot easier to push people away and to make scenarios up in your head where they already hate you and to keep them at arm's length rather than open yourself up to them and see what the real reaction might be. And Artemis demonstrates that perfectly. And it's also funny that the first person she thinks of is WallE. It's almost as though she doesn't want to disappoint him, nor doesn't want to be ostracized by him. Because again, it would be easier if she already believes herself to be, and to keep him at arm's length, than to try and let him or anybody else on the team in. You know something funny about secrets? For the most part, they don't really stay buried. I'm sure there are a few secrets that haven't come to light yet, but if you have any sort of a care about the secret that you're keeping, it's going to be harder and harder to keep it. And that's something that gets presented very well in the literal next episode. That's all Artemis centered, which is nice because she's barely appeared in the previous 2 episodes. But the whole plot of this episode really stems from the fact that Artemis figures out that, first of all, I don't know how she didn't know this, but she figures out that McGann and Connor are in a relationship, and she's been crushing on Connor hard since her first appearance.
Oh, how long have Connor and Megan been a couple?
Couple? No, they're not,
Will you please stop fidgeting?
You are so making this up to me later.
So, of course, instead of doing, like, the logical thing, and just, like, going to the party, being chill with it, or whatever, she's pretty pissed off, and ultimately decides that, well, I've got to go kick some ass, because now I can't go to the party and hang out and flirt with Connor like she wanted to. But, unfortunately, their fun girls' night out is completely stopped in its tracks by somebody named Harm. This is a dude that really only speaks one singular word, and derives a lot of his power from being completely detached from all emotions and anybody and anything around him. He feels nothing except harm, the harm he inflicts onto other people. He stole a pretty powerful magic sword, and now he's pretty much using it to trounce 2 teenage girls, and he looks like, quite literally, like a shonen villain. Like, if you've ever watched a shonen like Dragon Ball, he looks like a Naruto villain. Like, he's just shirtless. It's so funny. That's super off topic. Getting back on topic, the girls are haunted and helped by what looks like a ghostly and ethereal figure that can only mutter the words secret. That ethereal figure is actually Harm's little sister. And I think this is genuinely, like, in tone-wise, one of the darkest episodes of this first season, especially because it's not like a fake out. Like, the previous training episode was a fake out. This isn't. Like, this is real. Secret, as the 2 girls have nicknamed her, and probably what I'm just gonna call her, is Harm's dead little sister. Harm murdered his own little sister so that he could have a pure heart. So that he could be pure enough to wield the sword, to not feel pain, to not be harmed, only to do harm. And he kept that a secret, kept her a secret, and buried her in the backyard in hopes that he would be able to continue to move on and to be, quote unquote, pure of heart and a better person.
This is your grave. This is your secret. This is you.
a ghost. An actual ghost.
Instead, he was defeated by the biggest secret that he had ever tried to hide and tried to hold in. It's honestly really sad, and should have served as a giant wake-up call to Artemis that nothing stays buried, quite literally. Her secret's not going to stay buried, especially when her parents and sibling keep trying to use it as blackmail. I said parents, I just mean Sportsmaster. Her mom's pretty chill. And while Zatanna may have tried encouraging Artemis to let her secret out and to let it go, let everybody know what's going on, unfortunately, Artemis ain't down with that. At least not right now.
Artemis, talk to me. Secrets don't stay buried, obviously. It's better to bring them into the light.
I don't have any secrets.
It's really the ending of this episode that gets me though. Not for any particular reason involving Artemis, because this is probably the only time I'm ever going to get to talk about it, but because the last thing she probably saw was that secret's sign that flickers. And that's the only thing the ghost could say. That was sad. Poignant, very straight to the point, great for Artemis's character, but sad. So let's have some like more fun, upbeat times, because yeah, we was getting a little dark there. So intermission real quick. The next few episodes for Artemis are actually pretty chill. We get to see her do fun stuff like trying to entertain a group of kids when the world gets split between kids and adults because of magic mumbo jumbo and Clarion the Witch Boy being Clarion the Witch Boy. We just see Artemis terribly singing songs and just smiling. We also might get to see what possibly is like the most devious backdooring I've ever seen, because this man WallE is having his birthday, in which, holy shit, WallE is oblivious. I think it's pretty clear McGann and Connor are dating, but nobody's told him. And since Artemis has already been told, and she's frustrated, and at this point I'm a little bit convinced she's crushing on WallE, so she ultimately decides, like, what way could I help ruin his birthday? Let's just tell him that the girl he's been crushing on does not receive it back. But oddly enough, WallE handled it a lot better than Artemis did, which I find absolutely hilarious, especially for what is essentially a gag bit. The next episode has everything to do with Artemis's family once again, and wait a minute, what's the Black Spider-Man doing here? I've already covered that arc for Spectacular Spider-Man. Wait a minute, haven't I made this joke before? Anyways, getting back on topic. This episode mostly revolves around Artemis once again having to deal with her insecurities. For the first time in a long time, she feels like she has true solid footing on the team. She feels like she's found her family and she doesn't have to worry about it anymore. And everything seems to be going pretty well, except for the fact that, as previously stated, those secrets that she's trying to keep buried continue to eat at her and continue to eat at the reality she's trying to build, the future she's trying to build with her brand new family. It also doesn't help that her mom accidentally let slip that Artemis didn't impress the League with her abilities as a hero, and it was rather the fact that her mother advocated for her as to why she partially got to be a part of the team. Something that seems to strike deeply within her because she thought she did this. She had proved herself to the team.
I couldn't bear to lose another, so I begged them to help keep you on the straight and narrow.
You begged? So I was some sort of pity case?
No, you're taking this all wrong.
And while she might be pissed off at this and upset, it's not enough to shake her confidence. She's got confidence, and she's like, you know what? It is what it is, ball up top. I know my team still got me. Until she goes to Mount Justice only to find that Red Arrow has been added back to the team, which puts her position on the team in threat, at least in her own mind. And it doesn't help that they now are doing a recon mission to try and capture her family, something that she immediately wants to take part in. But oddly enough, this is the episode where Kid Flash really starts to open up to Artemis and essentially tell her, we care about you and we've got you.
No, I mean, I'm jazzed about Red Arrow. We go way back, you know? But you've made your own place on the team. You have nothing to prove.
It's honestly kind of sad because she very much has a secure position on the team. Everybody respects her. Even WallE, who was her D1 hater, very much respects her and her position on the team. And they recognize that Red Arrow can also bring something valuable to the team as well, outside of what she can bring. But I think a lot of the time, especially for her growing up, there was no idea of, if somebody does something similar to what you do, your position just gets took, and that's all that matters. And you'll just be tossed aside and left alone once again. Something that just doesn't sit right with her at all. It also doesn't help that this mission directly involves her family, something that she is so afraid of being let close to the team, specifically Red Arrow, who still has it out for her to this day. And Artemis feeling all of this pressure, feeling all of this fear of her past being found out, she makes a very poor decision. And that's that she ultimately leads two of her closest friends and two of her biggest believers in Calder and now WallE on a wild goose chase, and essentially screws them over on this mission and decides that she's going to go it alone and try and take down her sister. Now, to the team, this looks like her insecurities have made her believe that she has to one-up Red Arrow, which might be partially true, but ultimately it's for her trying to keep them out of her family business. And it's really heartbreaking because WallE was riding so hard for Artemis in this episode. Like, he was riding so hard for her. That man was quite literally arguing with his best friend ever for Artemis, only to unfortunately be proven wrong. All while at the same time, her family is consistently playing on her insecurity and playing on the idea that her team doesn't value her and is actively trying to get her to turn against her team. It's in all honesty really messed up and really sucky when WallE has to pretty much eat all of his words that he's been saying in defense of Artemis throughout the entire episode. It's honestly really sad. I swear, man, Roy was a D1 instigator in this season, bro, specifically to Artemis. This man, I mean, I know this, it's because he was under mind control partially, but dude, he was just a D1 instigator. And it doesn't help at all that her dad done shows up at her house and starts talking on some crazy evil shit like, they don't love you like we do. Come back to the family business.
You tried, baby girl. You can fight Jade. You can fight me. But you can't fight who you are.
Yeah, bro, he really gives off creepy vibes. But even with all of that, Artemis still rides for this team and for her family. It's really interesting because there's a few episodes between this and like her climactic character arc. And in those episodes, like, stuff happens, but it was honestly this scene that really helped me in the basis of writing this script, which was that even throughout all of this, Artemis still holds strong to this being her found family and to this being her team. It's Robin's whole episode, which if you're watching this video, you've probably seen the other one. And it's all about Robin and dealing with his past. But in the episode, Red Arrow is questioning all of the potential mole candidates and being really hard on them. And it's Artemis who gives him the reality check. And ultimately, it's Artemis that earns his respect by being honest about how she feels about the team.
None of us are perfect, but each of us would give our lives for this team. So try to keep an open mind.
It was a really beautiful moment, and also a hell yeah, because Artemis finally stuck it to this dude who has been hating all season long. I mean, D1 hater, out here worse than like Richard Sherman. But now it's about time that we get to the climax of her character arc at the end of this first season. And it's very poignant that she quite literally takes the mask off. This is the episode she reveals herself and her past, her real self to the team. Also the episode that we get the GOAT Rocket, who for whatever reason shows up at like the very end of the season and is here for like 2 or 3 episodes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry, I apologize. 2 episodes. She's in 2 episodes and then doesn't do anything for the rest of the show. And it drives me insane. But it's not her video. It's Artemis's video. And so in this episode, not only has Red Arrow, for example, been called up to the league, and that's the only reason he joined the team, but also the team has been sent on a wild goose chase because there's a mole on the team. And so this is the final climax of the mole story. Essentially, the 3 characters that we've been building up to and have been shown to potentially be the mole throughout this season turn out to not be moles at all. As a matter of fact, it was always Red Arrow, and he was using the whole mole thing as a distraction. And instead what we get is this big reveal that all of the 3 people who have been speculated to be moles and have low-key joined forces with the bad guys revealed themselves to the team and made sure their allegiance to the team was known and felt. Made sure that what they were doing was right. Artemis very much shows her past, puts her found family on the line to show her past and to show her cards, to hopefully fully gain their trust.
Why?
Yeah. I was so desperate to make sure none of you found out.
I knew. Hey, I'm a detective, but it never mattered. You aren't your family. You're one of us.
It's a very beautiful sequence because Artemis is finally getting to let go of her insecurities. She's getting to let go of the secret that she's been trying to keep buried and the one that's been eating at her much like how it was eating at Harm. But instead of letting it be her downfall like Harm did, she instead let it be her guiding light and let it be her beacon into being a better person and a better hero. It was an absolutely fantastic episode. It was a fantastic character arc, and it was a joy getting to go back and watch, because I remember Artemis being one of my favorite characters, but I could never really remember why. And as I said early in the episode, or this video, my apologies, she could have easily been this one-note, one-dimensional straight man for WallE that is nothing more than his relationship bid for the show. And instead, they gave her a real and impactful character arc. And it was absolutely fantastic. She feels like a real character, not just there to serve as a romance subplot like in Spectacular Spider-Man. You know what? I don't even want to talk about that. And in the end, I think we get what is honestly the healthiest and most deserved relationship in this show, at least during its first 2 seasons run. And I was so unbelievably happy at the end of this episode and getting to wrap up Artemis's character arc. We're coming close to the end of me talking about Young Justice's first season, and I've really enjoyed it. I think I have 1 or 2 more videos planned before I tackle season 2, but this has just been such a grace and wonder to go back and look back at the 5 main characters from this show, and I've been so grateful to do so. So thank you all so much for watching. To those of y'all over on YouTube, thank you all so much for watching. You guys help make this channel possible. Your viewership is so appreciated. Now it's time for me to do the whole YouTuber spiel. If you like the video, please leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike and then give me some constructive criticism in the comments, as the only way I can improve as a creator is if you help me with, you know, understanding what I'm doing wrong, because I can only see so much. If you want to sub, it's free. You can always unsub later. And as well, I have a Patreon, which is linked down in the description below. It's $1 a month. Don't feel like you have to, but it helps me to make these videos, and you get to see them early, unedited, or whatever changes I have to make for YouTube's version of the video. And as well, you just get to support me as a creator, and that means the world to me. And finally, if you're in the $5 or above tier, I shout your name out at the end of each and every one of my videos. So shout out Belladonna, shout out Oscar, shout out McGann, shout out East Sibbert 13, shout out Transgers1, Gabriel LaFontaine, Video Gamer 75, Golden Boy 420, Dakota Rawson, Donovan Gomez, and MC Bomb 27. You all are amazing. Hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. You know, you think I'd get better at that, but I only seem to get worse as time goes on.